Nikolaos strode beneath the shadowed stones of the Theodosian walls, his boots tapping a rhythm against the worn flagstones that led to the gate of Eugenius. The great gate stood open just wide enough to permit him and a few others through. Above, lamp smoke curled from a brazier by the guard post, and somewhere within the walls, a bell told the arrival of full dawn. He paused, taking in the mingled scents pressed against Constantinople's sea edge. Some mornings, it was fish and brine that greeted him. Today, however, the spice docks near the Golden Horn overwhelmed all else. Cinnamon bark leached its warmth into the mist, mingling with the sharp tang of pepper, the cloves' heady oil lingering in the cold air. He drew his cloak tighter, the familiar sting of expectation waking him better than any watchman's call. Ahead, the waterfront rode itself into slow motion. Lanterns bobbed on a half-dozen skiffs as the first boats nosed out from the Bosphorus's morning fog. A galley from Pera creaked at its moorings, and from its hull came laughter in Armenian and Greek as men tossed thick ropes shoreward. Shop shutters rattled open behind Nikolaos as he passed, merchants emerging to squint at the ship's rough silhouettes in the half-light. The tides glinted, gold and grey, against the slime-bright timbers of the quay. Nikolaos moved along the causeway, his eyes seeking the warehouse bearing his family's mark, a painted red amphora. Beneath its battered sign, the day's business would soon begin. As a stevedore passed, lugging a sack of what smelled like nutmeg, Nikolaos wondered what secrets would slip ashore beneath the city's watchful stones this day. The first true bustle began scarcely after the last bell faded. Longshoremen, their arms roped with old scars, moved in twos and threes, their shouts rising above the dull slap of water against hulls. Crates stamped with the palm mark of Alexandria thudded onto planks under the orange flare of pitch torches. Nikolaos lingered at the edge, watching strong arms heft bundles wrapped in brittle palm fibre cord. Danube wheat, Cypriot almonds, but, crucially, spices too, laden with the whiff of distant breezes. He pulled a folded sheet of parchment from his wax-sealed pouch, working the seal loose with his thumbnail. The date stared back at him, May 11th, 1167, beside the signature and flourish of a Levantine shipmaster. The manifest listed each item in precise, deliberate minuscule: 20 bales cinnamon, 6 crates cloves, 2 barrels black pepper, sundries yet to be inspected. Nikolaos's finger traced the lines, committing the numbers to memory. Mirrored on his face was the tension of a man with profit, riding on every grain. A few feet away, Georgios the scribe hunched over his squat desk, pushing aside crumbs and drying ink to unroll his supply of papyrus. Every arrival got a tally. He dabbed his reed in lampblack, pausing only to squint skeptically at weights barked by the cargo men. Nikolaos greeted him with a curt nod, receiving in return a grunt and the raised eyebrow of a bored official accustomed to such mornings. Each name Georgios recorded, each weight, each dock and crate, would later be copied into the city's official ledgers, kept under lock in the Boukoleon quarter. The docks found their rhythm as more merchants gathered, clutching sheaves of lists. Sunlight leaked pink over the horn, gilding the sweat already gathering on Nikolaos's brow. Nikolaos followed behind his allotted shipment, weaving through stacks of milky glass jars and saffron boxes until he reached the inspection table. Here, the law's gaze waited in the form of Anna, the imperial customs clerk. Tall, with braids pinned tight beneath her veil, she greeted Nikolaos not with warmth, but the brisk efficiency of one who had weighed enough spices to feed 100 feasts. Anna had already pulled aside 2 of the heavier burlap bales. She unknotted the cords herself, pinching a sliver of cinnamon between her fingers and snapping it, a brittle crack. Her scales sat ready, squat iron beasts balanced by stone weights etched with the double-headed eagle. Nikolaos watched, heart thrumming, as she loaded one bale after another. The numbers dictated everything. Taxes, trust, his future. He glanced down at his manifest. The cloves seemed light, by his reckoning. A crate was missing perhaps 2 handfuls. He tried to mask his worry behind a merchant's smile. Anna's eyes flickered to him, then to her slate. She made a note. The barked weight did not match the tally on his document. Her tongue was sharper than any blade. "Explain this," she demanded, tapping the barrel at his feet. Nikolaos offered an apology, hedging about split sacks and shifting cargo. Anna's rebuke left no room for excuses. "Next time, the fine will not be so gentle." She chalked her figures, marking his sheet with a stiff flick. His cheeks burned as he reclaimed his papers. Around them, the aroma of cinnamon and cloves remained constant, masking the more complicated sense of worry and relief. Swelling voices cut through the morning. Crews from Ancona and Messina hawked their wares, shouting prices over the drones of gulls. Nikolaos paused near a coiled rope when a broad-shouldered man in Genoese blue edged into his path. The man offered a curt nod, then produced a glinting medallion from beneath his cloak, its face pressed with the gold cross of St. George and a line of Latin script. Nikolaos recognized it immediately. It was an imperial trading license, the kind granted to foreign factors only after years of negotiation. This one bore the date 6th indiction, 3 years gone. "Pepper," the Genoese murmured in Greek, rough but passable. 8 chests, at the old price. He spoke with the assurance of one who believed the medallion settled all questions. Nikolaos frowned. The empire's new edict had fixed higher prices for all pepper, and private dealings edged into dangerous ground. Yet the Genoese's thumb traced a line over the old license as if daring him to refuse. As Anna turned her back to tally camphor barrels, the Genoese leaned close. "For your trouble." He pressed a folded coin skin, its weight unmistakable, between the splintered slats of a crate. Nikolaos felt the small pouch pulse in his palm. Across the pier, a customs scribe thumbed a list. Anna's voice rose over the shuffle. Nikolaos hesitated, then pocketed the bribe beneath his manifest. His conscience flickered. Such deals were as old as Byzantium. So were the risks. He scribbled a new sum on his chit and passed it to the Genoese, who grinned, a mouth of missing teeth, and slunk away, his medallion vanishing into the crowd. By the time Anna glanced back, all that remained was the faint smell of oiled leather and pepper. The shout rose from the Persian freighter at Dock 3, a sound sharp as glass. Nikolaos, already halfway to the bay, saw what was happening. 2 haulers, sweating under the morning sun, struggled with a broad-stamped bale marked Khorasan. Suddenly, a seam split wide, and saffron poured in a golden waterfall onto the dung-dark planks. A gasp rippled down the quay. For a moment, everyone stared. Then order evaporated. Men lunged, boots scraping, hands scooping bright threads from the gaps between timbers. One younger labourer, cursing in Armenian, elbowed past Nikolaos, trying to sweep a handful of saffron into an old hat. Someone else shrieked as their boot slid on the slick filaments. Nikolaos joined the rush, heart racing. Saffron was precious. A single pound was worth more than most men's monthly wage. He knelt, pinching trembling fingers through drifting pollen, desperate not to lose the shipment's value, or his standing with its owner, a merchant from Ray whose anger was legend. The Persian overseer shouted above the chaos, waving a ledger, but the wind carried the saffron and the shouts out over the harbour. Anna appeared, arms crossed, face a mask of tired irritation. "You will pay for every dram lost," she barked, her scales already clinking in her satchel. The dock was painted gold and yellow, the colour of sun and kings. By the time calm returned, Nikolaos had rescued only a small twist, scarcely enough to cover a kitchen's feast, but at least something. The rest was trampled, drifted, or swept away, soon to sink with the tide beneath the city's ancient stones. Nikolaos scarcely had time to brush the last saffron from his trousers before a new tension prickled the air. Mikhail, the imperial auditor, strode down the wharf in dark robes edged in crimson. His servants trailed behind, bearing parchment rolls in an iron-bound chest. Everyone nearby fell silent, dock hands averted their eyes. Even Anna collected her weights and stood straighter beside the camphor sacks. Mikhail's gaze fixed on Nikolaos. "Your ledgers," he snapped, voice low yet carrying. "From Lent, and your pepper receipts." No point contesting. The audit order hung from Mikhail's seal ring, heavy as judgment. Nikolaos dug nervously through his satchel and produced the fat, oiled ledger. Pages crinkled as he turned to last Lent's tally. Inbound shipment from Alexandria. Dates inked in hurried Greek. Signatures billet thin. Mikkel's ardent stylus hovered. A flick, then a circle, then a frown. These weights do not match the customs mark. Anna, summoned with a gesture, handed her own slate notes from Easter week. The auditor compared, tapping numbers. Sweat crawled down Nikolaos's collar. Errors cost silver, lies far more. "Here, 3 sacks pepper, short by 1 mina." The words landed flat and heavy. Nikolaos's mind raced. The cargo was lighter. Yes, but he remembered the bruised barrel from Alexandria, the way it leaked by the stairs. He recited the details in a careful monotone, eyes on Mikhail's gloved fist. Mikhail's eyes narrowed, but he nodded. "You will pay the difference to the bureau," he announced, voice cool. Relief flooded Nikolaos, for now the ledgers balanced enough for the day to continue, but Mikhail's seal still glinted on every crate, a reminder nothing escaped the city's notice. Nikolaos edged into the vaulted aisles of the main spice hall, the marble flags cool beneath his sandals. Air heavy with cumin, old ropes, and sun-warmed dust thrummed with the voices of merchants and sailors. There, near the gaping mouth of the archway, a Levantine sailor with an amber earring gestured animatedly to a knot of listeners. He wore the salt and tar stains of a long haul, his linen trousers still streaked from the sea. Catching Nikolaos's glance, the sailor dropped his voice to a conspiratorial hush. "They say the ships of Cambay and Hormuz floated up, broken off Gujarat. 24 gone in a single night. Cyclone last year, in the month of Pausha. I was there. Cinnamon barrels torn open on the breakers." His eyes narrowed as spice buyers clustered, hungry for news as much as cinnamon itself. The prices rise eastward, pepper ships grow scarce, and the old pirates from Crete prowl nearby, picking off what storms do not claim. Nikolaos listened, weighing the story. He pictured the loss, ships laden with clove and cinnamon, snapped spars spread along the Kathiawar coast. In his head he calculated, if the 1165 storm was half as bad as the sailor claimed, next month's pepper might fetch double at Constantinople's tables. Yet risk lingered. If pirates hounded what little made it past Rhodes, even well-connected men would feel the squeeze. The sailor's voice dropped further, almost lost amid shouts for saffron and anise. "Last week, the ship, St. Procopius, vanished near Crete. Watch your bills, insurance is dear, and fists grow quicker." Nikolaos nodded, uncertain if the warning meant opportunity or threat. In the market's dim light, rumors weighed as much as coin. By noon, the spice hall's heart pulsed with expectation. Sunlight slipped through high arches, gilding clouds of dust and the brassy flare of merchant scales. Buyers pressed close, Greeks, Armenians, Syrians, each intent on finding the finest cinnamon or the sharpest peppercorns. Nikolaos stood at his usual station beneath a faded wall fresco of St. Nicholas, his trays stacked with burlap-wrapped bales. He produced his slender silver tasting spoon, its tip shaped like a crescent leaf, and his initials, N.K., engraved above a little ship. Drawing a careful pinch of cinnamon shavings, he placed samples on black-glazed dishes. Buyers stepped up in turn. One sniffed, another rolled the scrap across his tongue, eyes closing to gauge sweetness or the bite of resin. Trouble brewed as two Armenian buyers from Galata quarreled over a lot. They spoke fast, staking claims traced in last week's promises instead of today's coin. Nikolaos intervened, voice measured. "There is enough for both. Let the measure decide." He weighed their share on a copper balance, tiny weights stacking like coins in a temple bowl. Faces cooled, grudging nods given. At last, a broad-shouldered grain importer extended his hand for cinnamon, palm up, and Nikolaos met it with his own. Their clasp was warm and brief. The Byzantine's word sealed deals more cleanly than contracts. Coins clinked into Nikolaos's pocket as he brushed spice dust from his sleeve. Around him, the hum of bargains thrived, each sample and handshake linking the city's hunger with the far world. The westering sun spilled gold across the water, painting docked ships blood-red and bronze. Nikolaos and Georgios, his oldest porter, ducked into the back room where sacks and ledgers sprawled in orderly chaos. The air here was quieter but dense, oil lamp glow mingling with the musk of pepper and sweat. Together, they stacked coins in careful rows atop the battered reckoning table. Byzantines heavy as fate, Venetian ducats light and bright as new leaves. Nikolaos opened his daybook, its leather worn soft. He listed each barrel sold, each basket left unsold, and beside these the sums owed to the city. The scribbling of the docking fee, 4 nomismata per shipment, written in steady Greek, had the placid clarity of habit. At the base of the column, he noted which goods would linger on: an overstock of dried ginger, 2 barrels of inferior cloves. Tomorrow, he would try again. Georgios muttered a joke about Saint Fortini counting barrels in heaven. Nikolaos smiled, tightening his fingers around a thin coin for luck. When the figures at last tallied, he paused by the squat marble shrine nailed beside the loading door, a tiny alcove blackened by candle soot. He pressed a coin between the saint's cold toes and whispered a prayer for safe harbour, steady winds, and honest weights. Outside, the golden horn murmured against its stones. The slate sky beckoned ships out, yet for tonight, Nikolaos could lock his chest with the knowledge that every peppercorn and nomismata had been honestly earned, and that Constantinople's spice trade would slumber on until dawn. Nikolaos slid the last barrel against the storeroom wall, the rough wooden hoop scraping across old stains. The floor was sticky here from countless seasons of split resin and syrup, but now the air seemed newly quiet. He fished the iron ring from its nail and pulled the doors together, thick-banded, their paint sun-faded to the colour of bitter almond. Behind him, the dock fires hissed low, a single pale plume struggling against twilight. The men had gone, boots leaving prints in the patchy mud, and their hurried laughter lingering only in memory. Nikolaos fitted the heavy bar across the gates, its clatter echoing down the empty arcade. The final turn of the key bit deep into the lock, and with it, the business of the day was shut away. Outside, the city had surrendered to night. Oil lanterns winked faintly across the Horn, bobbing with the slow sway of anchored Scutarian skiffs and the rare, broad-brimmed Venetian hull. Somewhere, a barge drifted, faint voices singing in Armenian, the melody carried by the river's salt breath. Nikolaos leaned on the doorsill and breathed in the mingled scent of pepper, cinnamon, tar, and seaweed. The familiar bite of pepper made his nose itch. A street cat wove between his ankles, bold in the cool, spice-laden dark. He watched the last embers fade to red and then to ash. The city's stone bulk was sleeping. Only the clink of a lantern chain or the low call of a watchman threaded through the air. Beyond the warehouse eaves, the ripple of the Golden Horn glimmered with reflected stars. Nikolaos wondered where tomorrow's tide might carry his fortunes, whether the wind would favor him, or some nameless gale would scatter the waiting ships. For now, the spice waited, and so did he, wrapped in the hush that settled over every honest barrel, every tired man, and every dreaming city.